One is, I think a lot of times if you're completely blotto and you're walking back to your car at 3 in the morning, you become an easy target. And two, so much of our resources go to patrolling U Street and 18th Street and 14th Street to a lesser degree, that we don't really get out into the communities. We really don't get on the side streets. And look at a crime map. And if you look at a crime map of last month in Adams Morgan, there were 28 muggings that happened. Of those 28 muggings, none of them happened on 18th Street, none of them happened on Columbia Road. They happened like into the pockets of the neighborhoods. And that's because cops are being forced to follow the knuckleheads who are getting in fistfights and, you know, peeing on people's stoops.
Do you think, like, specifically because like in the Adams Morgan area, do you think like the culture and the environment, like the bars and the restaurants, do you think that has an impact on maybe underage youth in the community drinking? Or?
Yeah. So my friend Ann Hargrove, she's an older community activist who worked for Mayor Barry and Frank Smith and Dave Clark, who are all 70s, 80s politicians. And she's been really hard on a lot of the restaurant ABC establishments that have opened in Adams Morgan. And I think it's because both of her children have really dealt with huge issues around alcoholism. One of her sons essentially is just homeless. I mean, he sleeps in their basement, but they only really do that to just ensure that he's not sleeping like, you know, somewhere out on the streets. But you regularly see this guy panhandling. You know, mom is maybe one of the foremost scholars on historic preservation in the city. Dad is a very politically savvy attorney. They're both like very well connected in the DC community, and you know, both of her adult sons just have massive issues with alcoholism. And Anne believes that is just a complete correlation to being in Adams Morgan and that having, you know, the party atmosphere being around all the time. Another old-time activist, his daughter committed suicide in Adams Morgan, and he believes too that like, part of that was that she just started coming into recreational drinking at an early age based on it. I have 2 kids. You know, my hope is that, you know, I like a bit of that fabric of
I'm sorry. Alexis, can you help me?
Look at that. I mean, I have 2 young kids in Adams Morgan, and I sort of like I mean, I live in Adams Morgan because, I mean, one, I think for my wife and for us raising our kids, there's still elements of sort of a connection to the old Latino neighborhood of what it was like, you know, 15 years ago, 20 years, 5 years ago even. But there's also this built-in sort of energy that's there. And I definitely think that the bars and restaurants are a big part of it. But I really don't feel comfortable going, like, my kids going out with me or my wife on a Friday and Saturday night on a certain hour. It just changes the atmosphere. And when they become teenagers, I mean, that'll definitely be something too. I mean, it gives you sort of great pops to have, like, even if you're just hanging out. I mean, I know a lot of kids who've gone through my organizations, there's a rail that's in front of a tattoo shop on 18th Street, and they'll just sit up on it and watch, like, the craziness. They call it Club Lookout, because they're like, where else are we going to be able to see, like, you know, a drunk person fall out of, like, the second story of a window, or, like, 2, you know, Marines duke it out in the middle of the street, and, you know, there's bound to be, like, a cop fight or something, and, you know, they're like, oh, it's great. It's like we can go watch the circus, and we live here, and this is our entertainment. That at some point is going to, like, start to affect you a little bit. That, like, you're watching things that are going to be traumatic moments in people's lives, or things that are going to stick with them for a period of time, and you're watching it for entertainment. You know, I definitely think that, like, there's parts of it. I definitely don't want to see Adams Morgan change and, like, get rid of, like, all the bars that are there. So I just want this place to be responsible. I just want it to be, like, something where, you know, you're not serving someone until they fall out of a window, or that, you know, you think that you're invincible and you can get in a fight with a Marine. 3 in the morning, or that you can eat 3 slices of super jumbo pizza.
Where does because when you say Adams Morgan's 3, I get the impression of just a strip over there. Like how far where is it? Like how big is the area of Adams Morgan?
For Adams Morgan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Adams Morgan draws its name out of the Adams School and the Morgan School, which were the height of segregation in the city. It showed the sort of stupidity and simpleness of folks back then. You would have 2 schools that were essentially 3 blocks away from each other. That one was white, one was for white students, and one was for black students. And so, I think Adams Morgan, like the Old Town residents, sort of wear that a little bit as a badge of honor because you have this really diverse train wreck of a neighborhood, but somehow it seems to function and people like living there. So the boundaries of it would be essentially anything west of 16th Street all the way to Connecticut, and then like from the Zoo to U Street and 16th. That's sort of the boundaries of Adams Morgan. But in that you have like just wildly diverse stuff. I think we've all become a little bit defined by what happens on Fridays, Saturday nights, and 18th Street. But there's a ton of just remarkable things that were sort of born out of that neighborhood, and I think it's really unfortunate that we've really just been sort of branded as like the party zone, because it doesn't really look back to there's amazing nonprofits that's got their starts in Adams Morgan. So like Mary Center is in Adams Morgan, Church of the Savior, which has all the Jubilee housing projects. Like most all the Jubilee ones are within Adams Morgan. Same thing, Potter's House, Joseph's House. All these phenomenal brainchild nonprofits that we're dealing with, like good guy causes, are all born in Adams Morgan. And Nia Kamatufia, who's a great mural artist, I think he did like one of the murals over here for you guys, but he's done the mural at Walter Pierce Basketball Court and Mary Center. And he lives over in Adams Morgan. To me, it's like there's just like such great. There was James Farmer, who was a civil rights icon back in the '60s. Lived there for long periods of time. There were old people from like the beat poet generation who lived in Adams Morgan and still up walking their dogs, even though they ran with Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac and those guys. And so, to me, it's a far more complicated, complex, sort of, like I said, beautiful train wreck. And unfortunately, I just think that sort of now we've let it get to a sort of moment of not disrepair, but just to a level of accepting the life that happens on 18th Street. And I'll say that most of the people who are the biggest problem establishments on 18th Street don't even live in the community. So you have, if they're getting in a car and they're driving back to Maryland or Virginia at the end of the night, that's not going to happen in their neighborhood. But the ones who do live in the neighborhood tend to be the ones who tend to be the most responsible and like sort of have that there's a bit of a social call to what they do and that they're part of the community. Not always. There's a couple of guys that live in the neighborhood. But.
So you're running for DC Council in Ward 1?
For DC Council in Ward 1, yeah.
How should you say this? Is there, just in general, I guess, whether you're elected or not, what's one thing that, in Ward 1, that one thing that you want to change and one thing that you want never to change?
Well, I'll answer it a little bit in reverse. The one thing I wouldn't want to change is the diversity of the ward. I've always taken. I'm afraid that the next census is going to drastically change it. I think that there's never been a majority population in the ward, so I've always liked the fact that you would have essentially, maybe 45% African American, 35% white, rest of Latinos and Asians. I'm really afraid that we're going to end up with a much larger white population than African American and Latino population in this next census. So to me, the one thing that we really have to do is we have to really retain the elements of that diversity, because we have such wonderful long-term that I wish the living, breathing sort of part of that ward will continue to exist. And